Welcome to chapter 28 of the book of Ezekiel. Continues with Tyre. City, we'll go to the map here. That is that's on the Mediterranean. Here it is. Over here in Tyre. Jerusalem is just a little bit south. Jesus went up into Tyre and Sidon, and you can read about that in the New Testament. So it was around at the time of Christ. And Tyre and Sidon are still around. Vivlos, I don't believe, is any longer around. So it says the word of the Lord, again, the Logos, came pros me legon. And you, O son of Anthropu, as it always says in this book, say to the Archonte, Tiru, say to the ruler of Tyre. Now, it doesn't say Sor anymore. It says Tiru. So that's an important thing right here, I believe, because Tyros is the Greek word, and it's called Tyre today. In the Old Testament, in the Hebrew, it's Sor. But this, to me, would show that it's no longer the same thing. As Sor, it has changed into Tyre, Tyros, at a later period of time. Now, there's no real timeline here that tells us when this is all going to happen. But if we go back into the last chapter in verse 36, that shows a timeline to me to be a future, because it says concerning Tyre, no longer will you be into the eon. It's going to be it'll cease to exist. So that has not yet happened. And so that would lead me to believe this is something that still has to happen, because there is still a city of Tyre. Now, one person could say, well, this is an allegory. If you have Babylon and you consider that in the book of Revelation as a Jerusalem, why not Tyre as being something else that is different? Well, big difference. Babylon does not exist any longer. Babylon, I've shown in the pictures when we went through the earlier part of Ezekiel, it's a level ground, just ruins. But Tyre is still a city. I think 100,000, over 100,000 people live in the city of Tyre. And he says, say to the ruler of Tyre. Well, there is no ruler of Tyre in history that is of any importance. You can go to Wikipedia and look, and what happened to the city of Tyre with Nebuchadnezzar and Alexander didn't depend on any one ruler like in other places. That's very important. And as we go through this chapter, you can see that what it's talking about here, this ruler, is way different. Nothing compares to the ruler of Tyre in the 28th chapter of Ezekiel. So the ruler of Tyre, and so then it continues and it says, thus says Adonai Kyrios, because your heart was raised up high, and you said, I am the God. I inhabited the dwelling of God in the heart of the sea. But you are a man and not God, and you made your heart as the heart of God. No ruler in the past ever did anything like that. So you'll ask, well, what are you talking about? Well, I believe that because in the heart of the sea, I believe he's talking about the beast of the book of Revelation. I think this is a future time where the beast comes from the sea, and it says in Revelation 12:12, woe to the earth and to the sea, for the devil has come down to you. So the coming of the beast from the heart of the sea. Tyre was a city on the edge, and so here this is I think is a precursor of the beast of Revelation. We can go all through the book of so we have our book here, entities of the book of Revelation. I'll turn the light on, and maybe you can see it better here. Entities of the book of Revelation. And if you go into it, in the page 151, right here, you'll see the beast from the abyss or the sea, which is basically the same thing. Abyss generally is the water. And it goes in and it has all part of 151, all of 152, and half of 153. So a couple of pages on this beast from the sea. And to go through this whole thing would take quite a while, but the book is available on our website bookstore. And so the beast from the sea is, let's see if I can find just an, and I saw as a glass sea with fire being mixed, and the ones overcoming from the wild beast and from his image and from the number of his name standing upon the glass sea, having harps. But, well, that didn't really say it was from the sea here, but I didn't mark them down. I probably should have from the beginning. And whenever they should finish their witness, the wild beast ascending from out of the abyss or the sea shall make war with them and shall overcome and kill them. So I believe basically that this is the beast from the sea, and we'll go in more and I'll show you other things that it says. But you are a man, anthropos. So this was not a something that's unhuman. Apparently the beast is going to be a human. And you're not God, and you made your heart as the heart of God. So this being is making himself as God. And then God says, are you wiser than Daniel, or did not wise ones correct you with their higher knowledge? Is it by your higher knowledge or in your intelligence you produce to yourself power? So he has power, now has considering himself with higher knowledge, and you procured Chrysion ke Argirion, gold and silver among your thesauveries, your treasuries, or by your much higher knowledge, and in your trade did you multiply your power? So apparently this being or this beast is going to be powerful, having control over the economy, I believe, of the world, and raise up high your heart by your power, and he will take control, and I believe he's going to be possibly entire. On account of this, thus says Adonai Kyrios, which is not far from Jerusalem, that is Tyre, since you imputed your heart as the heart of God, for this, behold, I bring upon you strange, pestilent ones from the nations. And now we can go into Revelation. You can see there's these wars going on with the beast and others. And they shall empty out their swords against you, against the beauty of your higher knowledge, and shall spread your beauty unto destruction, which is in the book of Revelation, all this wars and things going on at the time of the beast, tribulation time. And they shall bring you down, and you shall die by death of the slain in the heart of the sea. So he will, the beast will die, be slain, apparently. Now, other things here shows other things that might happen, but when you get into the beast and Satan, they're really not the same. But the similarities of the things that are happening in this chapter 2, both the beast and Satan, are pretty amazing. And it continues in 9, in saying, will you say, I am God, in the presence of the ones doing away with you? But you are a man, anthropos, and not God, in the hand of ones piercing you. So when he dies, he'll know that he is human. In deaths of the uncircumcised you shall die by the hands of strangers. For I spoke, says Adonai, the Lord. So that whole section there, and then it says, it begins to me another section. Came the Logos of the Lord to me, saying, O son of Anthropos. So this is a different section here. Take a lamentation over the ruler of Tyre, and say to him. So is it the same person it was talking about earlier, probably the beast, yes, possibly, say to him, "Thus says Adonai, the Lord, you are a seal of likeness, full of wisdom, and a crown of beauty." And we read in Jeremiah 21:24, other place that this mentions with this 656.2, aposphagisma, a seal of likeness, full of wisdom and beauty, that it's from God's. It says a seal as on God's right hand, and he pulled Jeconiah, the king, out. It talks about that in Jeremiah 24. So it has to do with God's seal and being sealed with wisdom and a crown of beauty. So somewhere along the line at the beginning, this being was beautiful and full of wisdom. And apparently took it to his head, became better than God or as God, because he had these special attributes. And it continues in 13. It says, and this is where it begins. It's interesting. You were in the luxury of the paradise of God. And paradise was someplace that was on earth, as far as we see in the book of Genesis, in second chapter, I believe, with talks about Adam and Eve being in the paradise. It's a garden, a formal type of a garden, not a garden of vegetables, but it's a beautiful, like a park. And then Satan appeared in this paradise. So Satan was in the paradise, and apparently the ruler of Tyre. Now, was it Satan? Because this paradise doesn't necessarily have to be on the earth. It's also a place where I believe it was in the heaven, because it says, Jesus says, when he's on the cross to the one robber, that today you will be with me in paradise, in Luke 23:43. So with Jesus is showing that there is not, it's a different paradise than the one that was on the earth at the beginning. So exactly where it is and how it ties into this, you were in the luxury of the paradise of God. Could possibly be the New Jerusalem, the cube, because here it goes on and it says, you bound on every precious stone, sardion and topaz and emerald, carbuncle, sapphire, jasper, silver, gold, amber, agate, amethyst, chrysolite, beryl, and onyx. And with gold you filled up your treasuries and your storehouses among you. There's 12 stones here mentioned, and they all correspond to the stones that was on the priest's oracle, and then I think it was in Exodus where it mentions that, and that all these are the same. Now in Revelation, there are 9 of them are the same, but 3 of them are different. In the New Testament, it has chalcedony, chrysoprase, and hyacinth, and Ezekiel has agate, carbuncle, and onyx, but everything else is the same. So it's a possibility that he's talking about the New Jerusalem, and where Jesus was going to be, and he went back to in the heaven. And with gold you filled up your treasuries and your storehouses among you, from which day you were created, so it's a created being, and you were carefully prepared with the cherub being anointed by God. So I just don't see how this could be a human, as far as any human that we know, way higher than any ruler, carefully prepared with the cherub being anointed by God and encamping in the tent. Even I put you on the holy mountain of God, and you existed among the midst of the stones of fire. And the cherub overshadowing, it mentions in Revelation 13:3, and one from out of his hands was as having been slain to death, and the wound of his death, I'm sorry, that's not what I wanted to read here. You existed in the midst of the stones of fire. So this, to me, is, again, the the New Jerusalem, the cube. Part I'm going to is another verse here. And you were unblemished in your days, of which day you were created, until of which time the offenses were found in you. So it was unblemished. It was sinless being that was created, and like Adam. Now, is it talking about Adam? I don't think so, the ruler of Tyre. But it's interesting that it's very similar. And it says, from the abundance of your trade, you filled your storerooms with lawlessness and sin. So apparently, this being, this person will take up lawlessness, sins. And it says, you were wounded from the mountain of God, and the cherub overshadowing led you from out of the midst of the stones of fire. And so, and you were wounded from the mountain of God. And we have, and that was where I was going to, Revelation 13:3. And one from out of his heads was as having been slain to death, and the wound of his death was cured. And there was wonder in all the earth after the wild beast. So that's another thing here that's a similarity. Your heart was raised up high over your beauty. Your higher knowledge was corrupted with your beauty because of the multitude of your sins. So this being takes on the sins, and I tossed you upon the earth. And we have here showing us that being tossed on earth, that this was in the heaven. Wouldn't be on the earth, he wouldn't be tossing him on the earth. So I believe it's another sign that this is the New Jerusalem, the cube that he was in, because then his being tossed, I tossed you upon the earth. And Jesus says in Luke 10:18, and he said to them, I viewed Satan as lightning falling from out of heaven. So that might possibly be here with this beast leaving with Satan and his minions. And I put you before kings to be made an example. And so this is the future time that he is going to come to the earth, take power, and become sinful being, and in a form of almost satanic type of a being. And because of the multitude of your sins and the iniquities of your trade, you profaned your temples. Your temples. I was thinking, that's really interesting. It wasn't the temple, your temples. Now, exactly what that is, maybe in the future, that the beast from the sea will set up these places where people will worship him. And I will lead fire from out of your midst, and this shall devour you, and I will put you for ashes upon the earth before all the ones seeing you. And it says in Revelation 20:10, and the devil misleading them was cast into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the wild beast and the false prophet are, and they shall be tormented day and night into the eons of the eons. And all the ones knowing you among the nations shall be gloomy over you. You became for destruction, and you shall not exist any longer into the eon. This is, as it says in Revelation. Now it changes to Sidon, which was the city close to Tyre. I believe it was to the north, isn't it? Sidon, yeah. There's Tyre, and there's Sidon, where Jesus went up to. They're in Palestine today. They will be in Israel, because the Hamath up here, it will be the northern part of Israel, and the southern part will be where Jerusalem is today. In the middle will be the Sea of Galilee, not in the middle, but a little bit further down. The Sea of Galilee, well, it'd be down around here. East of the sea is the high mountain, probably where Jesus went to the Transfiguration, where the city will be built of the last 10 chapters of the book of Ezekiel. When we get to it, I'll point out why I believe that is why this boundaries are going to be changed, but this area is all going to be eventually part of Jerusalem. So I could see where the beast would take up residence in Tyre. but Sidon, the other city, it changes. And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, O son of man, again the Kyrios and Anthropu, firmly fix your face against Sidona and prophesy against it. So it again is still around. And say, Thus says Adonai Kyrios, Behold, I am against you, Sidon, and I shall be glorified in you, and it doesn't have a person, and you shall know that I am the Lord in my executing judgments among you. And I shall be sanctified among you. Now, is he referring maybe when Christ came up there? I don't know. That's kind of pushing it, but he's going to be sanctified. But the sanctification is, I think, by destroying it. And I shall send out against you death and blood in your squares, and there shall fall men being wounded by swords among you, surrounding you, and they shall know that I am the Lord. So this future war that will take place will affect even in Sidon. And there will not be any longer in the house of Israel a barb of bitterness, nor a thorn of grief from all the ones surrounding them, of the ones dishonoring them, which people in Lebanon, the Palestinians, do. So it's going to be a future time. Again, I think because it shows that here. And they shall know that I am Adonai Kyrios. People are going to know who God is. Thus says Adonai Kyrios, and I will gather the house of Israel from out of the nations of which they were dispersed there. And I believe that's a future dispersion that's going to happen, but then they'll be brought back again like they are in 1948. And I will be sanctified among them before the peoples, and the ethnon, ethnic comes from that, the nations, and they shall dwell upon their land which I gave to my bondman Jacob. So I believe this future time that they're going to dwell as they are today. You'll say, well, why not today? Well, because I don't see this type of living in peace and prosperity is not yet happening to Israel. It's definitely being dwelt in, and they shall dwell upon it in hope. Well, you could say, well, that is today. And they shall build houses and shall plant vineyards and shall dwell in hope whenever I execute judgment on among all the ones dishonoring them, among the ones round about them, and they shall know that I am the Lord their God and the God of their fathers. So that's an interesting part there with Sidon, whether that's going to happen now or if that's in the future. I'm not exactly sure there, but Israel is there now and dwelling in hope, and possibly now. Chapter 29, the prophecy against Egypt, another place that still exists. We still have a country of Egypt, and find out about Egypt and the Pharaoh and the things that are going to happen with Egypt. In the 29th chapter, next video, and I hope you'll join us. God bless.